Sometimes the biggest gap in our lives is not talent, intelligence, money, or opportunity. Sometimes the biggest gap is the difference between what we dream about in private and what we actually allow ourselves to begin. Welcome back to Blooming After Darkness. And if this is the first time you're here, thank you so much for clicking play. And if you're back again, thank you so much for coming back. So, on this channel, we talk about mental health, healing, growth, habits, and the emotional realities that often come with trying to become a better version of yourself. If you're someone who wants to understand your mind more deeply while also creating a life that feels more meaningful, then you're absolutely in the right place. Today, I want to talk about procrastination, but not in the simple way people usually talk about it, because most of the time, procrastination gets labeled as laziness, poor discipline, or bad habits. And while habits do matter, procrastination often runs much deeper than that. A lot of procrastination is emotional. A lot of procrastination is psychological. A lot of procrastination is fear, wearing ordinary clothes. Because when people think of procrastination, they often picture someone avoiding work, scrolling endlessly, or putting things off because they simply do not feel like doing them. But many people who procrastinate actually care deeply. Sometimes they care so deeply that the task begins to carry emotional weight. The goal matters so much that starting feels overwhelming. The dream matters so much that failure feels personal. And because failure feels personal, the brain begins protecting itself before anything even happens. The protection can sound like, I'll do it later, I need to think more first, I should wait until I have more energy, I need to be in the right mindset, I need a better plan. And sometimes those thoughts feel reasonable, which is why procrastination can be hard to catch, because it often disguises itself as preparation. It disguises itself as waiting for the right moment. It disguises itself as needing clarity. But many times what is really happening underneath is fear. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of putting real effort into something and discovering that it may not work immediately. Fear of being seen trying, fear of not doing it perfectly, and sometimes even fear of succeeding, because success changes expectations. Success creates new responsibilities. Success means you can no longer hide behind potential, because now you have proof that you are capable. And for some people, even that can feel uncomfortable. This is why procrastination can show up even when you genuinely want something. You can want growth and still resist the steps required for that growth. You can still want change and still avoid the discomfort that change asks from you. You can want your dreams and still feel frozen when it is time to move. That does not make you incapable. It makes you human. Think about how often people imagine their future. Even if familiar discomfort is frustrating, it still feels known. Known patterns feel safer than unknown outcomes. This is why people sometimes retain in cycles they dislike. Because change asks for emotional tolerance. It asks for patience while things are unclear. It asks for effort before confidence arrives. Confidence rarely appears first. Confidence usually follows evidence, and evidence comes from repeated action. This means confidence is often built after doing something awkwardly many times, not before. This matters because many people delay goals until confidence appears, but confidence is often the result, not the requirement. The same is true with self-trust. Procrastination slowly affects self-trust because every delayed promise teaches the brain something. When you repeatedly tell yourself, I will start tomorrow, and tomorrow keeps passing, your mind quietly begins to doubt your own words. Not dramatically, quietly. And that quiet doubt becomes identity language. I never finish things. I always wait too long. I have no discipline. I'm bad at consistency. But those statements are usually learned conclusions, not permanent truths. Patterns can change, and self-trust rebuilds through small proof. Very small proof. Not dramatic promises, not giant overhauls. Small proof. One task completed, one promise kept, one step repeated enough times that your mind begins believing you again. This is why tiny action matters more than people think. Writing one paragraph matters. Walking 10 minutes matters. Recording one imperfect video matters. Sending one email matters. Researching one next step matters. Tiny actions look unimpressive from the outside, but psychologically, they are powerful because they interrupt avoidance. And once avoidance is interrupted, momentum can begin. Momentum is often underestimated because it feels small at first. But momentum changes identity over time. A person who keeps showing up begins seeing themselves differently. The brain notices repetition, it notices evidence, and slowly the internal language changes. Maybe I do follow through. Maybe I am becoming more disciplined. Maybe I can trust myself more than I thought. Comparison can also intensify procrastination because in a world where people constantly see finished products, polished outcomes, and visible success, beginnings can feel embarrassing. Someone sees another person already succeeding and suddenly their own first step feels too small. But every visible success has invisible beginnings. Every confident person once looked uncertain. Every strong system once began messy. Every creator once produced work they later outgrew. The beginning is rarely glamorous, and yet beginnings are where everything real starts. Many people admire results while quietly resisting the stage that creates them. But growth lives inside that stage, inside awkward beginnings, inside repetition, inside showing up before certainty exists. Imagine writing the book, launching the business, starting the channel, going back to school, changing careers, improving their health, saving money, creating a life that feels different from the one they are living now. The dream itself often feels exciting, but the first step usually feels small, uncertain, and strangely uncomfortable because dreams are beautiful in the imagination. Reality asks for repetition. Reality asks for effort on ordinary days. Reality asks for consistency long before visible results appear. And this is where many people get stuck, because motivation feels powerful in the beginning. But motivation, it's not stable. Motivation rises and falls. Some mornings you feel determined. Other mornings you feel tired. Some days you feel inspired. Other days your mind looks for an escape. This is why waiting for motivation can quietly delay your life. Because if you only move when motivation arrives, your progress becomes dependent on a feeling that naturally changes, and feelings change constantly. This is why action matters more than mood. Action teaches the brain that movement can happen even when emotion is inconsistent. In fact, action often creates motivation after the fact. This surprises many people. They assume motivation creates action, but often action creates motivation. Think about how difficult it can feel to begin cleaning a room. Cleaning a room you have been avoiding before you even begin. The room feels heavy, the task feels bigger than it is, your mind notices everything at once. But the moment you pick up one item, throw one thing away, fold one blanket, something changes. The brain begins to relax because movement has started. The task becomes real instead of mentally inflated. And this happens with goals too. The first 5 minutes are often harder than the next 30 because starting breaks resistance. And resistance is often strongest before movement begins. Another reason procrastination becomes powerful is perfectionism. Perfectionism often sounds admirable because it sounds like high standards, but many times perfectionism is fear dressed as standards because perfection creates a condition that can never fully be met. If something must be perfect before it begins, it may never begin. If something must be flawless before being shared, it may remain hidden forever. Perfection tells people to wait, to adjust more, to learn more, to fix more, to delay exposure. And the longer perfection leads, the more time quietly passes. A person can spend years preparing for a moment they never allow themselves to enter. And eventually, what hurts most is not failure. It is realizing how much life was spent standing at the edge of the beginning. Sometimes procrastination is not about avoiding work. Sometimes it is about avoiding discomfort, because beginning something means entering uncertainty, and uncertainty makes the brain uneasy. The brain often prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar possibility. And often, dreams do not disappear because people stopped wanting them. They disappear because they were postponed too many times. Not intentionally abandoned, just delayed repeatedly until time becomes distance. That is why asking one question can be powerful. What is the smallest honest step available to me today? Not the biggest step, not the perfect step, the honest step. Because honest steps are sustainable. Sometimes the honest step is 10 minutes. Sometimes it is writing an outline. Sometimes it is opening the document. Sometimes it is sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it. That still counts. Because movement changes something internally even before it changes something externally. And often the people who eventually reach goals are not always the most motivated people. They are often the people who learned how to continue even when motivation changed. They learned how to work gently instead of dramatically. They learned how to begin imperfectly. They learned how to stop negotiating endlessly with fear. So, if you have been waiting, delaying, overthinking, or telling yourself that you need a better moment, maybe this is the reminder that life often shifts through smaller moments that we expect. Not through huge dramatic breakthroughs every day, but through repeated ordinary decisions. One ordinary decision can begin changing a pattern. One ordinary decision can begin rebuilding self-trust. One ordinary decision can become proof that you are no longer waiting in the same way. And listen, if you have been carrying a dream quietly, protect it enough to begin. Not perfectly and not all at once, just honestly, because progress does not usually arrive loudly. It often arrives quietly. Through repetition, nobody applauds at first, and over time, those quiet steps become visible change. Listen, if you want to go deeper into topics like mindset, anxiety, habits, healing, and personal growth, I do have courses available on my website where I teach more deeply on these subjects. I also create digital e-journals on various mental health topics. Those are available on my Etsy shop for people who want guided reflection and tools for growth. And if you enjoy conversations like this, please make sure you subscribe and come back to Blooming After Darkness, because growth is rarely one giant moment. It is often many small moments that finally begin to change your life. Thank you again for being here and for listening to this until the end, and I will see you in the next video.